Welcome back to the Agentic Insider. I'm your host, Philip Swan. In this show, we explore cutting-edge ideas and trends in AI and data, as well as hear from other industry thought leaders in the AI space. This podcast is brought to you by readiness AI, committed to safe and responsible AI innovation. Let's dig in. Welcome to this week's edition of the Agentic Insider. With me this week is an amazing guest, somebody we have known for quite some time, and somebody who has been with Microsoft for over 35 years, with global experience in development, design, and large-scale deployment of software systems and solutions. He's a corporate vice president and distinguished architect at Microsoft. Uli Homann, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and really looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. So, Uli, we ask all of our guests the same question to start off with. What future are you solving for?
Well, so if I use the snarky answer, my future is at some point in time, I will go into retirement. I will go and think about more hiking rather than working on interesting capabilities. But as a serious answer, the way we're looking at the future at Microsoft is really to think through how we help humanity achieve more of its goals and also solve some of its core issues. Again, we have a growing population in some areas of the world. We have a demographic change in other areas of the world. So we have to think through how we balance those two forces, medicine, biology, all of these other things where we still have a lot of diseases that cannot be solved today. How can we go and solve those? So if you then take technology as a core enabler, that's really the future we're looking for. So how do we help humanity achieve more, be able to do stuff, and also solve critical issues like food, medicine, and other things?
That's great. So double clicking into a little bit, you're clearly involved with Microsoft's AI strategy, and particularly with generative AI. In your recent presentations, you've spoken about the paradigm shift of AI and upcoming tsunami of AI. What makes this wave of AI fundamentally different from previous technological shifts, in your opinion?
This is the first time where we actually don't have to write code to achieve outcomes. And this is something that I think a lot of people underestimate, that the more data you feed those systems, the more scenarios you give those systems, the more intelligent they will become without any of us having to write code. And I think that's the fundamental difference that a lot of people just don't understand. If you're looking at the trajectory of capability from those models, just the model in itself, you get the applications on top. By 2030, these systems will actually have the capabilities of PhD level capabilities today already. So I don't know what's beyond PhD level knowledge. And most of us, if you had some of the most intelligent academics that have two or three PhDs. Now imagine if you have a system that has a PhD in 200 or 250 topics. That is actually instantly at your fingertips. And that's why these systems are different. That's why we are seeing a lot of change in the way we think about software, we think about our work, we think about creativity and other areas where AI is helping us moving forward.
Just one more thing I would like to go into there. Is you talked about not writing code anymore. Does that mean Microsoft is letting go all of its software engineers, these amazing software engineers? What are they going to be doing after this?
Well, again, you don't write code in the sense of if you ask questions to the system. You will write code around the system because obviously an AI model in itself cannot do anything. So a model has intelligence like our brain. If you were just a brain on a stick, and you didn't have hands, arms, a mouth, and so forth, you couldn't do anything. So if you think about the AI model as a way of looking at a brain, you see that brain a lot of knowledge, therefore it can reason over your requests, can look at what is the best response to your ask. And then it says, okay, I have a response, but now what do I do? Well, I need to be able to push buttons or turn on lights or whatever the action is that you might want to get done. And therefore, AI models always need software systems that host them and scale them and so forth and secure them, but also software systems that help them getting things done. And that still needs to be coded, that still needs to be built. And then you also need to build an end-to-end system where the AI model, the various tools that you use to enable or empower the AI model to get a job done, as well as the user interaction, the human connection, all of these things still need to be put together into end-to-end systems. So software development will change, but it's certainly not dead.
And so, being as this is the Agentic Insider, we haven't really talked about agents. So how do you overlay the idea and the concept of agents and how you see them, in the paradigm shift that you've just talked through?
So think about the waves of AI that we have been going through. The first wave is what I call the assistant phase. We at Microsoft call them the co-pilots. And the way I think about this is that was the right thing to do, simply to introduce the concept of AI to people. Having a co-pilot that helps you in whatever job or ever thing you want to do, trip planning or business planning, whatever you might want to get done, was actually the right thing to do. It got people used to AI. It got people really thinking about AI as a positive force, and helped them get their job done faster, cheaper, better, whatever the dimension is that you're looking at. Now with agents, we're starting to go to the next phase, which is, okay, this is not decoupled from humans, but now we're looking at business functions. We're looking at things that need to get done, where a system will go and say, I need to go and understand, I get an event, something comes in, a new order, a new event, something. And normally, or a lot of times, we get humans that are the event catchers. You get an email, and this email then triggers a lot of activity. Now, if you think about it, you can now go and have an agent start to prepare the work and eventually go reach out to a human that says, okay, here's what I saw. The new order came in. Here's what I'm preparing because based on the last orders we saw from this customer, I did a credit check. I did all sorts of other things. And now, Philip, I will go and ask you to look at the plan I developed, give me the perspective. Yep, thumbs up or thumbs down. And there you go. And therefore, you don't have this necessarily the strict separation that everything has to be started by a human, which is the co-pilot phase. Now you can actually have the system, the agents, start to go and work on things, but then eventually bring in the human being. So that's the basic business flow. If you then add to it to say, if I go beyond just thinking through that there is an event, things happen, preparing a plan and so forth, and then I go and present the plan to the human being, you can also now say, we three are you people, but we could now have 3, 4, 500 agents with us in this team, and we could start to work together where we might be something where we give agents work, but agents might come back to us and give us work too because they did certain things and they prepared or they created a certain set of activities. And now it's our turn to do certain things. And that's going to be the interesting step for the next phase, where first phase, human talks to the system in an interactive way. The second phase, now we see agents becoming not independent, but becoming part of the business process flow. And human beings normally go and approve, confirm, and supervise. And the next phase is going to be, we see collaboration where human and digital agents will effectively work together to solve whatever the outcome is. And again, don't just think business application, think also medical science, where research agents will go and scour all data that's available about molecular medicine in whatever way. And then they start to see insights based upon whatever the scenarios we're trying to solve. But then I need Dr. Philip to go and help me because he has perspective that the agent doesn't have. And bringing these two forces together where the agent with infinite knowledge and infinite recall, coupled with human ingenuity and human perspective, I think it's going to be the basis for breakthroughs that we haven't seen before.
I think that's true, and I think it's we talk especially about enterprises and large customers doing this, but it should really affect consumers significantly as well. I mean, you just came back from Machu Picchu. There should be a situation where if you want to go to a co-pilot right now and say, "Hey, I want to book a trip to Machu Picchu. I want to arrive in Lima. I want to be able to do this. I don't know anything about it. Book it for me." Okay, then it can't get that far right now. But if there were, to your point, research agents and so on to be able to, and then the organizations, agents that knew, yeah, okay, this is your preferred airline, this is what you prefer, aisle seats rather than window seats, and where the delegated authority and entitlements were, then it's not overly stretched to be able to have a system be able to do all of those pieces and have you as a human in the loop or over the loop going all through all of this.
Yeah. Again, that future is not that far away if you think about it. And it's going to be an interesting conversation to be had. So I'm working with my friends from EY in Germany who asked a very good question to lots of people that own websites. So websites are designed for humans to look at it. And people are gullible at the end of the day. We always get recommendations from friends or from people that we know or care about. And because we know them, we hold their opinion in higher regard. That's how this works.
Sure.
So you have recommendations, you have cross and upsell, you have all sorts of things that are happening that us people think is important. Now think about the next future that Alistair talked about, which is now I say I have a goal. I want to go to Machu Picchu and I want to travel, whatever the cheapest way or the best way or whatever the dimension I give. Then I give this task to a set of agents that now go and work on my behalf. Agents are not gullible. They have a job. They get variables. They know your preferences. And from there on out, they will just go execute. And if you are a website owner, you need to start thinking about what does that mean if the person or the thing that looks at your content and is trying to determine if I go to make the purchase here or there, is not a person, but an agent. It's a really interesting conversation. And once you start to think about it, you literally scratch your head and saying, what does that mean? Where do I go? And I think that's where really interesting answers are still lacking, I would say. But it's certainly a future that we will see emerge very rapidly.
Going back to your work, I mean, you get to see and work with some of Microsoft's most complex and largest customers. And what we are seeing in the industry is, many organizations are struggling to move AI from R&D or experimentation into production. What are the key success factors for operationalizing AI at scale, in your opinion?
It's a manifold problem because at the end of the day, partially it's people, it's organizations. And while I hear you that a lot of companies are not there yet with respect to deploying AI at scale, a lot of companies are deploying AI at scale. So I think it's a little bit of are you really in, or are you just dabbling? So I think it starts with organizational willingness. Are we really going to do this or not? The second element is when you look at 2023, that was the year where everybody built their own enterprise ChatGPT capabilities.
Yep.
You couldn't buy anything because the capabilities were all there, but it was all for developers. 2024, you saw the first product emerge, Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, Enterprise, and others. And now you could actually go and buy stuff. Most companies are better at buying things than building things. And once you can buy them, you also have expectations from enterprise vendors like Microsoft to say, oh, you need to make sure that it's secure, that it's responsible AI based, that I can manage it, that they have observability, all of these capabilities that we expect from enterprise software. And frankly speaking, a lot of the AI capabilities were there with this, but building applications at that level is not that easy. So building versus buying. Buying helped. So now we are seeing companies deploy 100,000 Microsoft 365 Copilot systems into their enterprise. That's AI at scale because it is AI. Now, the if you then look at how do I scale custom AI, which I think is the second question, that is getting to the point where a lot of people are saying, oh, I need to get my data in order. So a lot of companies are spending a lot of time in terms of what does my data look like? How do I have the right data, have enough data? Is the data available to my AI capabilities and so forth? So thinking through access of the data, then also securing the data, because as we all know, large language models or generative AI does not have a security model built in. It's actually a knowledge engine, and that knowledge is like given to everybody. Obviously, that's not the right thing to do in an enterprise. And therefore, you need to think through authentication. So who am I? What do I have access? And then authorization or entitlement. What do I have access to? And that ultimately both in the data systems as well as in the applications on top of the AI models that have to do this work. And again, that is where a lot of companies are struggling, because sometimes they just don't know what is the right access model. And how do I then enforce that access model is not something that's easy. Again, buying these applications by Copilot and so forth alleviates you from this problem because we solved it. But if you build custom applications, you have to solve. And while there's technologies available for you to do that, you still have to think that through in terms of, okay, is Alistair having access to this data? Should Philip have this access? And what, maybe under what context? And so as you know, from enterprise applications, and AI in this case is no different. This is a complex question. Entitlements are always fun to think through.
Right. You emphasize, transformation, especially AI transformation, is 99% about people and change management and 1% about technology. Can you maybe dig into that just a little bit for us?
Yeah. And so, again, when I talk publicly about AI and transformation, at the end of the conversation, we always talk about responsible AI. So the
Yes.
first thing that I ask people is, or beg them, is to have a public charter about what they're going to do with AI and what their view on AI is. Because a lot of times, or I'm certainly worried that people would just keep going with AI without stepping back and thinking about what does this company, whatever your company is, want to do with AI. Microsoft has a very public view on here's what we're doing with AI, which also implies what we are not going to do with AI. And I think that's a really important step. The second thing I always encourage people to do is have the organizational structures in place so that if an employee feels uncomfortable with the use of AI, they have a path of escalation. If the path of escalation is a direct management chain that is responsible for your review, for your salary, for your incentives, most likely you will just, okay, I'll go do what I need to do because I like my job or I need my job, whatever the pieces are. So at Microsoft, we have an organizational independent escalation path where people can go and say, this is the scenario that I've been asked to implement. I feel very uncomfortable with it. Please help me understand if this fits into the charter that we have about AI. And I think a lot of companies just don't think that way. And I believe we need to help them understand how to get there. So that's for me, step one. Step two, or maybe the other way around, is AI ought to be driven by business. What is the business need that we're trying? So it's almost to the question you started with, Philip, which is what's the future we are building for? And AI ought to be a tool that is being utilized in that building that future. And if you don't know what that future is, it's really hard to use AI because it's kind of cool. It's wonderful. But if there is no directed output that we are looking at, the investments are just not justifiable. And AI needs investment because it's a new technology. You said AI transformation and so forth. Therefore, having a clear business strategy of why you want to use AI, then having a clear philosophy beyond what we're doing with AI. Then the third thing is out of these two come investments that lead to how are we going to build new capability or differentiated capabilities with AI, and then prioritization of use case. And simply saying, okay, we are building one or two or three applications with AI. One thing that I see a lot of companies do is spend a lot of time building an AI platform, abstractions, and all sorts of other things. And while I understand sometimes the desire to do so, it's very, very distracting and doesn't add business value right away. So for me, I would start with apps, meaning applications of AI, and then potentially say, okay, we need an abstraction, or we need a platform, or whatever it might be, or ideally work with a platform provider like Microsoft or somebody else to go and have that platform built for you rather than building it yourself. And that's where I would say a lot of people are still struggling, because applications add value, platforms are potentially super valuable, but it takes time to generate value out of them.
Right. And then the other thing, what just, on there, you brought up responsible AI. Alistair, I'm sure now, because that's a topic that is near and dear to all of our hearts, and absolutely critical to Iridius's future is safe and responsible AI. Can you explain from your perspective what that means, what responsible AI means?
So it goes back to the charter that I mentioned. You should have a charter that should talk about what are we going to do with AI, and again, as I said, ultimately, what are we not going to do with AI? You shouldn't say what you're not going to do with AI. I think that's always a bad idea. You should always say what you want to do with AI and then imply the rest, kind of thing. And we have, as the industry, and Microsoft has been leading this for a long time, have clearly stated a number of dimensions of what responsible AI is. So when we need to work through bias, everybody as a human being, we're just biased. We need to make sure that the AI system that we built actually mitigates the bias as much as humanly possible. And that means you need to think through, what does your data represent? Because everybody says data is where this gets. Yes, it's true. But just to give you an old example, the face recognition database that everybody used to train their systems was biased because it didn't understand people of color. It had very little female representation, but everybody used it to build their face recognition systems until IBM and Microsoft said this data set is flawed. And we actually hired photographers to go throughout the world and get pictures of underrepresented people in the data set. So there's now 10 years ago, there's a data set now that includes a lot of people of different variety, let's call it that, meaning color, shapes, sex, and so forth, so that face recognition now recognizes people equally and not just white males, which was the original data set that a lot of people used. And I think those are some of the things that we need to think about. Then you need to think through fairness in terms of, if you are, for example, making decisions using AI, what are the criteria you're using to make decisions, or give AI to make decisions, because you're not outsourcing, but you're handing over the decision making to AI. You need to think through what that principle is. And there's a couple of others that are in there. One of them that's in the original list of responsible AI is transparency. And that's going to be tough because we can mathematically understand what the models have done and how what the conclusions are, but we cannot tell in detail how, in this specific instance, the system decided to go from request to conclusion. We just don't know how the model actually executes. And so that's something where I think we need to think through is transparency in terms of what is the question and what's the outcome. That's the thing we can control. But what happens in that box in between, we cannot control, because it is such an advanced neural network that we cannot really see what's going on. It's very similar to our brain, where we come to conclusions, but I don't think the brain researchers can really say, okay, how did we get from A to B? What are the neurons that ultimately fired? And I think that's where responsible AI is the core, but we have to think through how to implement some of these principles.
So I think that's crucially important. And I want to come back a little bit to the use cases that you talked about earlier. So when enterprises coming and they're saying, hey, okay, we want to be able to do great stuff with AI, but AI isn't always the answer. I know we're on podcast where we're talking about this, but it's not the answer to everything. So you're a distinguished architect. That means you're part of the technical leadership of Microsoft. When customers come to you and they talk about, their challenges and their problems, how do you help them think through, or how would you guide them on when to use AI compared to when not to use AI? Because at the moment, everybody thinks, oh, I'm missing out. I have to use AI for everything. And that's clearly not the case.
Well, it's one of those where, Alistair, the way you phrased the question is a bit amorphous, because I think there are two dimensions of the usage of AI in this case. There's using AI to get to a conclusion or an outcome itself, like the purchasing example we used before.
Sure.
Where, again, you give it a task and the AI system reasons over your ask, thinks through and builds a plan and executes using tools as we discussed before. I think that's the core of your question. But there's other usages of AI where, for example, if I use GitHub Copilot, I use AI to build software. I'm in building code. And for me, those are now becoming intermingled because we will always now use AI to do certain things, meaning building software code, writing documents, emails, whatever it might be. So that usage of AI is always going to be there. The core question is, when do I use AI to beat the program, meaning run this thing? And the way I think about this is AI is really optimally used if you give a task and you expect AI to think through an outcome. So you don't know exactly how you want to execute the task. The AI system is going to go and reason over your request, build a plan, and let's say in step one, presents the plan to you. This is based upon what you asked me. Here's what I think we should do. Whatever the ask is. Again, build a trip to Machu Picchu, figure out a marketing plan, whatever it might be, based upon the information you have available. So think of this as Alistair, as a software developer, or as a business analyst getting asked a question, without me as be the asker of the question, the person that asked the question or asked you to do this. I don't know how you're going to execute it. And I actually don't care, Alistair, because I know that you're a smart person. In this case, I use AI because the outcome is unclear to me. I just want, here's my ask, tell me how I get this done. That's where AI shines, and that's where I think is going to be super helpful. AI is not going to be helpful if you need determinism. This thing needs to be executed exactly the same way, exactly the same time, every time. You cannot have variation. I would also not use AI because it's expensive, or more expensive than normal software, if I know exactly what I need to do. This is step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is what it is, and this is always going to be this way. Build a piece of code. Use AI to help you build the code, share, but don't use AI to beat that code. So if the outcome is fixed and very clear and ideal, or is in most cases also deterministic, don't use AI. Code is fine. Use AI to build the code, but code is the right answer on this one. And sometimes you will actually see us develop some parts in AI and some parts in code. We already talked about AI model not having the ability to execute, do anything. They just think. So they need definitely code to do certain things. And sometimes you effectively say, I have parts where I don't know the plan, parts where I do know the plan, and how do you bring them together as well? And again, that's where MCP and other efforts become so critical as part of our agentic future.
So you and I have spoken about this in the past, Uli, in terms of quantum computing and where is that? Where do you see quantum computing and its intersection with AI? I know we're a long way off from having quantum, commercially available, but from a futuristic standpoint, how do you see quantum technologies, potentially changing the AI landscape, and what should enterprise be thinking about today, if anything, about quantum?
Well, the first thing that everybody needs to think about is post-quantum encryption.
Yes.
That should be a project that is on everybody's list. Good news is that the NIST folks came with the right recommendations. A lot of industry people have helped, including Microsoft and others. to get to the right recommendations. As far as I know, Windows, Linux, and so forth already have libraries for post-quantum encryption, but everybody who uses encryption needs to start thinking about post-quantum, because while we might say that there is no functioning, scalable quantum computer yet, who knows? Maybe there is one that nobody has talked about. Not everything is in the press all the time. So that's why I would say, let's start with that, post-quantum encryption. Then the second thing is, it looks like we're making much more progress and faster progress than actually even I anticipated. Actually, I had hoped that I would be in retirement and happily looking from the outside for having people to deal with quantum. It looks like I actually have to deal with quantum before I retire. And it seems to be, because Google announced their chip in December. We did announce a fairly good chip in March, I think. Then 4 weeks ago, we announced a new error correction system that allows us to use even a quantum computer that's not built on topological qubits and help with the noise that is the problem in qubits today. So it looks like we're making more progress toward a system that can be utilized faster than we all thought. So is it going to be 2 years? Is it going to be 5 years? Is it going to be 18 months? I don't know. It seems to be we're making faster progress.
It's certainly a window that we should be looking at, is what you're saying, and
Yes.
enterprise companies should be thinking about this.
Yep. So the way, and let me give you a very concrete example where we didn't use a quantum computer, but we did use quantum math. So I think it was in 2024. Yeah, 24. We worked together with the University of Washington and a small startup on a question. The question was, lithium is obviously critical for batteries. Lithium, however, is a very rare metal, and therefore we don't really want to use as much lithium as we do today in forever. So this startup was chartered to figure out, can we find a new element that effectively uses less lithium? And they partnered with the University of Washington and Microsoft to say, okay, what can we do? And what we did is, we had been working on foundational models for chemistry for a while. And we worked with this little startup to say, can we use this AI model, foundation model, which uses the same principle as large language models, but for the domain of chemistry? And the chemistry model was then put onto high performance computing systems, but using quantum algorithm or quantum math as the way to shape the matrix in this case. Sounds like a really obvious thing, but in this case, it's just matrix math, not the matrix as we know it from movies. And because of the rapid ability to run tests and variation, we effectively cut down a normal process for chemistry. Finding a new element in chemistry takes about 30 years. We were able to cut it down to 3 months.
Wow.
Using this AI model plus high performance computing plus the quantum math, and iterate so fast that at the end of the day, we were able to find a new element in 3 months that reduced the amount of lithium by 70%. And that's obviously a nice breakthrough. As far as I know, that element is now available, so people can actually buy it. I don't know from which company. I thought it was a European company that decided to go into production with this. And I think that's really the way I think about quantum computer. And if a real quantum computer would have been available, I think it would have been even faster. The other thing that quantum computing will allow us to do is actually simulate the real world. Because right now, as you know, all simulations is still very hard to do. It takes a lot of time, and it's still not quite real, meaning it's an approximation to reality. There are very good models out there or systems out there. But quantum, I think, will give us way more opportunity to get more real-time or real-world systems and data that then be used by AI to go and think through the real world and think through material science, biology, those kind of capabilities. And that's where most scenarios will reside for quantum computing.
And I think, when you talked really earlier in the original question about, well, what future are you solving for? I think, there are so many diseases that are out there. There are so many humans that don't have access to all of the resources that they need. And I think that the ability for us as a society, as a globe, to be able to quickly solve those or more quickly solve them, and then be able to come up with solutions to distribute it in a way that allows companies to produce it, okay, make a profit, but at the same time be able to provide it as a service out is a huge opportunity to be able to crack problems that could take hundreds of years and bring them down to a more manageable timescale to make an impact on the planet.
Yep, that's exactly how I think about it. And it's for me 2 dimensions, right? On the one side, we want to bring more solutions to people and make it cheaper, faster, and so forth. But on the other side, for example, this lithium example is fantastic because we're trying to also reduce the impact of humanity on Earth,
Yeah.
so that we can move forward with comfort and so forth. But at the same time, leave some of the Earth for our people that come after us, let's say.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think environmental sustainability is a huge is hugely tied up with AI, especially when you see, companies buying nuclear power stations and things like this at that point. And it's like, well, the amount of energy requirement that in theory is then going to be needed to be able to power this has a level of impact where it doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with environmental sustainability. But I think, to your point, if a company is putting itself out with a responsible AI charter and a set of principles, and if you include the need for environmental sustainability in that, then you guide your organization to say that your development of AI has to go hand in hand with ways of being able to ensure that the impact upon the planet is as minimal as possible.
Yeah. And again, everybody who's in the AI infrastructure business, like us, we have to think through all of this in terms of how do we provide the infrastructure for these solutions, while at the same time minimizing our impact on society and sustainability and so forth. That's not an easy thing.
No, it's not. I'd love to talk just a little bit about, and as we finish up here, about Industry 4.0 and manufacturing, because you've been deeply involved with companies like BMW. Is no secret there. So how do you see AI and cloud technologies transforming manufacturing, and even what does Industry 5.0 even look like from your perspective? I'm not even talking 4.0, going even further. What do you think?
So from my perspective, there are going to be 2 big changes that are happening. So despite what a lot of people currently talk about, the manufacturing folks really have a hard time finding people.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard for people to work in a factory. They're hot, they're smelly, they're noisy, and lots of people just don't want to do that anymore.
And they're dangerous too.
Yes, no, Philip, it's a very good point. So a lot of people don't want to work in factories anymore. Therefore, you will see the rise of physical AI, as the NVIDIA folks call it. Robotics rise go up, and AI is going to be crucial for us to robotics to succeed, because otherwise we have to program every potential pathway, and that's just not going to be possible. So the notion that I mentioned before is that you give a entity a task, and this task then gets executed or gets reasoned over, a plan being built, and the plan is then executed. I think is going to be super crucial in in industry, so manufacturing. So robotics is going to be a huge thing over the next 2 or 5 years. You will see the rise of humanoids. You will see a lot of capabilities being developed in this space. The second thing, it's almost orthogonal, but on a similar trajectory. I talked to, for example, a oil and gas company and their refineries. So today they have a lot of people in these refineries turning dials, logically speaking. So they effectively configure the refinery for whatever the output is based on whatever the input is. And personally, again, lots of companies are running out of people that want to do this kind of work. And now they kind of said to me, look, very simple. Whenever we know, whatever the crude is we get, we know exactly what to do, and we know what the outputs are we are supposed to generate. So we can use AI to completely configure the entire refinery. And you will not do this automatically. There are still going to be humans that will supervise this plan and the execution, but ultimately the AI system will take a look at the input, design the out based upon, or look at the output desired, and then build a plan of configuring the refinery and the chemical plant and so forth. And I think that will go and move the human from what I call the operator, which is what they are today, to the supervisor. AI becomes the operator in factories. Again, physical AI for certain tasks, AI is intelligence in another set, and humans become the supervisor for security and safety, but on the other side, for making sure that whatever the outputs are being optimized and so on. And I think this motion of Industry 5 is going to be based upon data, which is really the focus of Industry 4. And we're now adding intelligence on top of it. And this intelligence will have these two forms. One is configuration and understanding of inputs and outputs at the larger scale, and then individual task execution, which is really physical.
So as we begin to wrap up here, what advice would you have for technology leaders and who are listening to the podcast? I mean, what are the top 3 pieces of advice you give them for navigating the current period of the rapid technological change that we're experiencing today?
Again, I'll start with the snarky one, which is, let's use the Nike slogan, just do it. You have to execute, you have to go and invest in AI, agentic AI, all of those capabilities we talked about, I think are critical for companies to start learning about, using, figuring out what that means. The second thing we talked about is have a charter. Do not start an AI journey without really knowing what you're doing. You can experiment, but before you go big, know what you want to do, know what you want to achieve. Again, I love the way you phrased it originally, which is what's the future you envision, and what are you working towards? And the last piece is make sure that you understand the responsible AI you want to execute and implement, and how do you enforce it. So the governance model of AI is going to be super important. We a lot of times think about governance in the beginning of the design of the solution, but always remember these systems learn. Therefore, runtime governance is equally important as design time governance.
Right. So finishing up here, you've had over 3 decades at Microsoft. You've witnessed multiple waves of transformation, technological transformation. What has surprised you the most in those 3+ decades, about how technology has evolved and its impact on business and society?
Well, the first thing I would have to say is the impact of technology in society has grown from being very, very few people and few areas of impact to everywhere. There is no area where technology has not taken hold, personal, professional. It's just everywhere. That's not the biggest surprise, but that's certainly the biggest change you see. The other piece, Alistair kind of alluded to it in his question, where he said, "Hey, is AI the answer to every question?" And unfortunately, we technologists have the tendency to take the latest technology and make it the answer to your question. Whatever the question is, this is the answer to your question. And I look at it as after 30 years as an architect, no, we always will use what we used before. We combine it with new capabilities, and the new capability is augmented with other capabilities that we already know how to use. A lot of the core principles stay the same. Again, AI systems also need to be monitored. They need to be managed. They need to be updated. They need to be patched. They need to all sorts of things that we know as enterprise people how to do. Now we need to do them for a new type of system. And the intelligent combination of what you already know and have with the new capabilities make the system really work. And that's really an important piece for me, is just because AI is there doesn't mean that the capabilities you have are used. Combine AI with what you have and you're on a winning streak.
So if you were to go back to your younger self and you were just starting your first day at Microsoft, what advice would you give to yourself?
Embrace AI, use AI, but don't be afraid of AI. AI is going to change the way we think about jobs and work, but we still need Alistair's, Phillips, and Uli's to make a company work. The company is the people and their perspective, plus helpers like AI. But without the people, AI won't be able to do anything for quite some time, if ever. And so from my perspective, use it, embrace it, don't be afraid.
Uli Homann, Corporate VP, Distinguished Architect at Microsoft, thank you so much for being such an amazing guest on our podcast, The Agentic Insider. And to our guests, thank you so much for listening to this great episode, and we'll look forward to speaking with you next week. That's a wrap on this week's episode of The Agentic Insider. Thank you for listening. For show notes and more, please visit agenticinsider.show. To learn more about Iridius, visit iridius.ai. We'll see you next time.